Hello guys, welcome back to Truck Engineering Explained. So today's truck came in with a very unusual problem. Other gears, engage smoothly except gear 8. So the driver complained that whenever he shifted to gear 8, that the truck begins to make a strange noise. So, in order to inspect what the problem is, we brought down the gearbox. After bringing it down, what we discovered is going to blow your mind. So come with me, let's see what's happened to the gearbox. By the time I got to the workshop, the gearbox was already down. So this is where I started recording the repair. So at this point, the main thing was to open it up and inspect the components around the gears, especially the parts responsible for engaging its gear. The noise was coming from somewhere in here, so we needed to find the exact parts that was causing it before putting everything back together. And this is where we found the problem. The synchronizer rings, also called blocker rings, had worn out and needed to be replaced. So but that wasn't the only thing we found. Right, so the shift fork or the selector fork was also worn and needed to come out. What initially sounded like a problem with the 8th gear turned out to involve more than just one component inside the gearbox. So at this point, there was no point replacing just one part and hoping for the best. Since the gearbox was already down, we decided to replace all the 40 parts properly, put everything back together the right way. Once we knew exactly what we were dealing with, the new parts arrived and we could get to work. Here we have the new synchronizer rings and the replacement shift fork, along the other parts needed for the repair. The old parts had already done their job, but after the wear we found, they weren't going back into this gearbox. Now it was time to start putting the good parts in. With the new parts ready, we started rebuilding the gearbox. The one synchronizer rings were replaced with the new ones, and the damaged shift fork was also changed. From there, everything had to be put back together carefully, making sure the components were sitting properly before tightening everything down. This is one of those jobs where you don't want to rush things. The parts may look small compared to the gearbox itself, but they are doing a very important job when we are changing the gears. So little by little, everything started coming back together, and once the assembly was complete, the gearbox was ready to get back into the truck. Now that the gearbox was ready, it was time to get him back into the truck. We positioned it back into its place, secured the mounting points, started reconnecting everything that had been taken apart for the repair. Once all the components were tightened and the final connections were made, there wasn't much left to do. The gearbox was back where it belonged. Of course, the real question was still waiting for us. would the strange noise in the gearbox in the gear 8 finally be gone? So finally, it was time to test the truck. So the engine started up and we began to check the gearbox through the gears. Everything was looking good so far, but the gear we really wanted to test was the gear 8. We had to take the truck for testing. After all, that was where the whole repair started. So once the truck got into gear 8, there was no more of the strange noise we had before. The new parts were doing their job properly. The gearbox was shifting adequately, and the truck was ready to get back to work. After taking the gearbox down, finding the one synchronizer rings and the shift fork, replacing the faulty parts, we finally had the results we were looking for. So after replacing the one synchronizer, the noise finally stopped, and after putting everything together, the truck is now ready to get back on the road again. The gears now engage smoothly and the noise in the 8th gear finally stopped. Okay, so thanks for watching another episode from Truck Engineering Explained. If you enjoyed this video, kindly give us a like, a follow, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.